I recreated this scene from this year's Spotify Wrapped in Remotion. I'll show you exactly how I did it, including the code, and as a bonus, I also show you how to recreate this 3D button effect from this year's Wrapped programmatically. As always, I started by creating a new project using the bun create video command. I put an image into the public folder and rendered it using an image tag. Then I rendered an empty div and animated it towards the top edge. This div is duplicated 200 times, with each instance having a different delay. The delays between two instances are also not uniform. So I used the Noise 2D API to generate some delays that feel both natural but still a bit random. When a circle approaches the top, it shrinks. So I apply a smaller scale if the top offset is not so big. And also I noticed that the artist image and the trail in its entirety is shaking a bit. So I also applied some noise to both the X and the Y position. Next, I wrapped everything I did so far into a reusable component. And I added some props like color, X and Y offset, size, and image source to customize each instance. For the background, I initially prompted AI to create a Remotion component with animated star lines. It did the scaffold pretty well, but I changed how each line is being rendered. It works by having 12 divs in a row. For each div, we calculate a random offset, a random height, and a random speed. Using these three variables and the current time, we determine the position, the Y position of each line, and we wrap it around if it exceeds the canvas height, so that when it moves outside of the canvas, we just put it back at the bottom again to loop it indefinitely. Now layering our two animations on top of each other, and this is how the final result looks like. Pretty close to the original, right? As always, I'll share the full source code with you in the description. Now, as a bonus, let's examine another thing from this year's Wrapped. Here we have a bunch of 3D buttons rotating in a staggered grid. Each button has a gray foreground and a gray side, and the background is red. And there's no lighting being applied. To achieve this in Remotion, I used my own 3D SVG engine. You may have seen it in some of my previous animations, and it also powers the button hover effect that is now on our website. This engine is undocumented, not very sophisticated, and definitely not production ready, but for the first time I'll show you how the API works. You can define content for the front side, for the back side, as well as specify a depth value, and then you can wrap it in a context provider to apply transformations like X rotation. And that just makes it feel like regular React, because it is, and you can animate like you usually would with Remotion. Since these are just regular div and SVG elements under the hood, they can be styled using CSS, and that makes it relatively trivial to lay out them using Flexbox in a staggered grid. And so here is how the final effect looks like. If you are comfortable exploring experimental APIs, which I am not quite sure about, then I'll also link the example in the description. Finally, if you're curious, here is my personal Spotify Wrapped of 2025. What did you think of their campaign this year? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers!